On a secret island, far, far away, lay giant, ferocious birds that ancient traders had to lure with huge chunks of meat so that they would fly down off their giant cliffs and, in doing so, knock loose what the traders were really there for: cinnamon sticks. Today, we bring to you the origin stories of cinnamon and sugar.
Winter may already be in full swing here in Minnesota, but it's never too late to give your garden a little extra protection before the deep freeze really settles in. Today, we're sharing the essential tasks, clever tricks, and expert insights that help your landscape survive our Minnesota winters with confidence. Whether you're catching up what you missed or planning ahead for next year, these winter tips will keep your garden resting easy until spring.
Well, hello and welcome to the Petal and Plot Pod, a seasonal plant stories and garden tips podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Anissa.
And I'm Eric.
Let me take you back in time, a long, long time ago, to an island we now know as Sri Lanka. But in ancient days, it had another name, Ceylon, a place already guarding a treasure that the rest of humanity had not yet learned to name. In the thick, sun-drenched forests of this island grew tall, modest trees, Cinnamomum verum. Their bark held a fragrance so warm and strangely sweet that early peoples believed the scent came from the breath of gods. Do you have a favorite smell? Something that you find to be like, oh, it's the breath of the gods? I guess, one flower I really like is Nicotina. Like when that flower
Mm.
opens at night, it smells so good. It feels like I'm gonna get on like a magic carpet and just like fly through the sky. It smells so good.
I mean, so I keep a jasmine plant indoors and then put it out during the summer. And when that thing is blooming, like that's another good scent. Again, another like evening scent many times or early morning scent that you find. I'd probably put that one in that bucket, yes.
Nice. Yeah. Jasmine is so gorgeous. So according to ancient lore, cinnamon's origins were mysterious because those who traded it refused to reveal its source. Arab merchants wove extravagant tales to protect their monopoly. They claimed cinnamon was stolen from giant ferocious birds that built nests atop unreachable cliffs on a secret island. And only by dropping heavy chunks of meat below the cliffs, they said, would the birds swoop down and then knock down cinnamon sticks loose in the process. And then they would go gather them and pick them up. And like, this is the kind of lore I am here for. I'm sorry. Giant ferocious birds in cinnamon stick nests on a secret island? Like, yes, that.
It sounds super extravagant. In my mind, I can't even picture today someone telling me that story. I think I'd be instantly like, yeah, right.
Hmm.
But they must have had a lot more scarier birds back then.
Maybe. But the truth did not lie with mythical birds. It lay with human hands. As early as 2000 BCE, the people of Sri Lanka were harvesting cinnamon with a mastery that was passed on from generation to generation. They cut young shoots, peeled away outer bark, and coaxed the inner bark into the delicate quill we know today. Learning this skill wasn't quick. Sometimes it took years or even decades to master the precise pressure needed to separate the bark from the wood. Soon the world beyond the Indian Ocean hungered for this luxurious spice as well. The Egyptians imported it for embalming, believing its warm scent purified the body for the afterlife, and they burned it for the gods and mixed it into oils for kings. By the time cinnamon reached Rome, it was so valuable that Emperor Nero reportedly burned a year's supply at his wife's funeral. And to burn cinnamon was to burn wealth itself. For centuries, cinnamon traveled across deserts and seas, from Arab traders to Venetians to European courts, and all while its true homeland remained a secret. I wonder, it's interesting thinking about like a spice being more valuable than money. I don't know
Mm.
what would compare to that today. Sometimes this actually just sounds like drug trafficking. Like the old spice stories sound just like
Mm.
drug trafficking.
It's kind of funny to think how, like a lot of things, like we just had the episode on chocolate or cocoa beans, right? And,
Mhm.
80 beans being worth whatever cow or thing you can buy. But I feel like it's interesting how like plants were like members of currency.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd have a lot of money in our gardens if we could say that was actual currency,
Oh,
right?
I wish. If only the money tree was real.
Yeah.
Well, everything changed in the fizz when the Portuguese reached Sri Lanka. They conquered its cinnamon forest and enslaved the local peelers. But the most fearsome chapter began later when the Dutch East India Company, the VOC, arrived. By the mid 17th century, the VOC was the richest corporation the world had ever known, a private empire with armies and warships. They allied with the Kingdom of Kandy, which was a monarchy on the island at the time, to oust the Portuguese, and then they betrayed their Sri Lankan allies and took the cinnamon groves for themselves. The Dutch began a single minded campaign to build their empire by enslaving people and expanding forced labor systems. They would burn wild cinnamon forests that were outside of their control. They built heavily guarded processing stations and constructed coastal forts to protect it, and controlled not just the production of cinnamon, but the information itself. At its height in the 1600s, the VOC held a global monopoly, and cinnamon helped finance their entire empire. By the late 1700s, cinnamon plantations elsewhere weakened the VOC's hold. Costs rose, competition expanded, and in 1796, the British seized Sri Lanka, ending over a century of Dutch domination. But the cinnamon tree endured. Its bark still curls into fragile quills just as it did thousands of years ago. Now, the cinnamon in your kitchen might not be cinnamon at all. So, the Ceylon cinnamon is considered to be the true cinnamon, and that's the cinnamon that comes from that legend. It's light, it has a delicate, kind of sweet taste. It has a lot of really thin layers, primarily grown in Sri Lanka. But there's also the cassia cinnamon, its stronger cousin, Cinnamomum cassia. Chinese texts mention cassia as early as 2700 BCE. Its bark is thicker, darker, and spicier. It's made of more of a thick single layer in its stick, and it's cheaper and easier to produce and is grown widely across China, Indonesia, and Vietnam. So while Ceylon stayed pretty rare, cassia is really what took over the world. And do you know, Eric, in your kitchen, if do you have cinnamon? If do you know if it's Ceylon or cassia?
I feel like I feel like we probably have a little bit of both. And I say that because my partner would want to make sure we get like the actual cinnamon, which I feel
The
like
real deal.
the real deal by going to like like an actual spice store that imports and things versus what you may find in a grocery store.
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
because Ceylon is a little bit more expensive and is usually found in like specialty shops or organic shops, where brands like
Mm.
McCormick and Kirkland are usually cassia. Some brands have that labeled and some don't. And this
Hmm.
is where it gets kind of interesting. In the US, the FDA legally allows both types to be labeled simply as cinnamon because it's just common practice, which I think is kind of interesting. Like, I don't know, do you think they should have to label which cinnamon it is?
I think so because there's a difference, right?
Yeah, and I know some people, I guess there's some health concerns with cassia, but you have to eat like a large amount every day to have like suffer health consequences, but it is slightly less healthier than Ceylon cinnamon, I've heard.
Yeah.
And so the true origin of cinnamon is a tale of botany and trade and myth and empire and secrecy and survival. A humble tree on a small island whose fragrance shaped economies, inspired legends, and endured conquests and traveled the world. Now, let's shift to another key ingredient that changed the world: sugar. Sugar comes from sugar cane, which is a tall grass first chewed by humans in New Guinea around 8000 BCE. So, this is around the time when humans were transitioning from hunter gatherers to more stationary lives with agriculture and tools. And I do enjoy picturing early humans like just munching on large sweet grass, like relaxing in the sun, no stress. I don't know. Or maybe they were stressed about saber-toothed tigers. I mean, they probably had different stresses than we do, right?
He probably did.
Sugar then traveled to India, where people learned to crystallize it into zarkara, the sugar we know today. And from India, sugar spread to Persia, the Arab world, and eventually the entire world. And during the Crusades, Europeans called it white gold. But sugar, like cinnamon, carried a dark side. plantation slavery.
Mm.
Enslaved Africans labored in the Caribbean from sunset to sunrise, cutting sugar cane with machetes, carrying stalks to mills, and working in crushing heat. Injuries were common, punishments were brutal, families were separated, and life expectancy was short. Yet, even in this cruelty, enslaved people resisted and survived. They preserved culture, faith, and community, and passed down knowledge of herbs and rituals to maintain hope and identity. And today, sugar is everywhere, and modern science shows it has a number of health consequences from cavities to weight gain to heart disease risk. But we love it. Like, I would say most people probably have sugar in something every day. And unlike an occasional sugar in ancient tea, today we consume it sort of constantly, oftentimes hidden in processed food since we subsidize crops like corn to make, corn syrup and stuff like that. But that's a story for another day. Cinnamon and sugar, two ingredients that travel the globe, shaped empires and changed lives, sometimes in sweetness and sometimes in suffering. And yet they endure. Their flavors continue to warm kitchens, inspire recipes, and connect us to a story thousands of years in the making. So, Eric, did you grow up eating cinnamon and sugar on toast like I did?
I
Like
did. Oh my
that was our
gosh, I totally
go-to.
forgot about that until you brought it up.
Really? Yeah, like we
Absolutely, that was like a
toasted.
treat.
Yes, butter and cinnamon and sugar on a piece of
Yeah,
bread toasted.
yeah,
Yeah, that was like the go-to sweet treat, I would say, in our house.
really, yeah.
I
I
was
feel like
Yeah, I think so. When we were young, for sure. When we were young, that was like the most accessible sweet treat,
yeah,
probably. Yeah.
yeah, because I feel like we always had all of those ingredients at any time, right? So,
Yeah, yeah. Man, I do love cinnamon. It's delicious.
I feel like I
So what
also
kind
used to
of
use cinnamon and sugar, like
cinnamon and sugar on like rice pudding?
and I guess it'd be kind of like rice pudding, but not pudding. So just like cooked rice. And then I think more people would probably add some like milk or
Mhm.
something to it. And then like the cinnamon and sugar to like sweeten the rice.
Oh, yeah, we did that too. We did call it rice pudding though, but it was just rice
Oh,
with milk and cinnamon and sugar, maybe a drop of vanilla
yeah.
also.
I associate like a rice pudding with like during the holidays.
That's fun. Yeah, we always have, rice pudding on the holidays, even though I guess technically is it a pudding? I'm not sure. It's rice. Oh, so what, garden tips do you have for us today, Eric?
Yeah. So I have to say, like, before we jump in, yes, I know winter has kind of already arrived for us here in Minnesota. So, like, snow is on the ground, the soil is frozen in many parts, and the garden kind of looks like it's like sighed deeply and said, like, all right, wake me in April.
Mhm.
So, but even though we're past that kind of initial freeze when we talk about getting ready for the winter in the garden, I thought for today's episode is kind of packed with like winter prep tips that are still helpful to like check off. And they're especially useful, like if you're listening from outside our frosty little zone 4 or 5 bubble here in Minnesota. Anissa, I was gonna ask, are you surviving the early snow so far, or are you still like in denial?
Oh, no, I love the snow. I'm really happy it's here. I mean, if it's gonna be cold, I would much rather have snow because it's really pretty. I love the way it falls on stuff. I love the way it lands on the shrubs and anything outside. I was a little caught off guard by how quickly it just got cold, cold, like for good, no end in sight cold. Because it was really warm one week, and then the next week it was like, here's 6 months of winter.
Yeah.
You're ready.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I enjoy the snow too. I agree with you. Like the prettiness, the cold, I can do a little bit without, but I'm at least happy that we have snow because without that, that coldness is pretty brutal on the garden. We'll like talk a little bit about that too. So today we're talking about preparing the winter garden for our deep freezes that are coming and will continue here for us. Especially into February, and what should have been done, what you can still do, and what to keep in mind even for next year. So even though things are frozen now, winter prep isn't a 1 day task. It's kind of a mindset for the whole season. So I thought I'd start with protecting trees and shrubs from winter damage. So one of the most important winter prep tasks is really protecting young trees and sensitive shrubs. And there's a fun fact, sun scald, that cracking that happens on the south or southwest side of tree trunks is one of the most common winter injuries here, as well as just a sunburn or winter burn. on different types of evergreen plants too, if they're south or southwest facing. So the U of M extension kind of explains that winter sun heats up that bark during the day, and then at sundown, the rapid temperature drop causes cells in the bark to rupture. And that's what creates those vertical cracks that you sometimes see on these young trees or sensitive shrubs. So, Anissa, when you walk through neighborhoods in winter, do you ever mentally rate people's like tree wrapping skills? Because I absolutely do.
Definitely, I'm definitely looking. In fact, there's a yard that I walk by often when I'm walking the dogs. They have 2 arborvitaes on the south side of their yard that had winter burn a few years in a row and had lost the sort of bottom part of all of their foliage,
Mm,
and they had put a sign up asking people to not let their dogs pee on the shrubs, and I was
mm,
looking at it, I'm like, "I don't think dogs are going up there."
mm.
I think that's winter burn, and then the next day I walked by again, I'm like, "Should I tell them?" Like, so I ended up actually writing them a letter, like a little note, and just being like, "I think, your arborvitaes actually have had winter burn in the past. This is what you can do this year to protect them," and I, like, gave them a little list. I don't know, unsolicited advice, but I was just like, "They're just gonna get worse, you know?
Yeah.
Don't wrap
Anissa,
them."
the good Samaritan, and all her plant knowledge helping out the neighborhood. Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like many times probably find people that haven't wrapped that makes me more concerned of what's going to happen, whether it's like sun scald or winter burn or even just like rabbits and other critters that we know during the winter time here for us sometime attack some of those things too. So to protect trees, especially like young maples, fruit trees, birches. You want to wrap the trunk with like a tree wrap, or I use like the white plastic guards from probably about, I put mine out in November, kind of before snow, but you can still do this today and then keep them on until like early spring. If you didn't, do this obviously before the freeze. It's something you can still apply and do. So just brush off the snow if you can and cover it. But it helps prevent that cracking and also protects from like our rabbits, voles, and others who consider our landscaping like a winter buffet, right? The same thing with like evergreens, boxwoods. If you want to use burlap to cover them, that does a great job in all of those things too in preventing. And I've seen some really creative ways that people apply that burlap. I mean, it can be super simple, just applying and wrapping it around not too tightly, but tight enough that it maintains and just maybe like using twine to like keep it on. But I've also seen people who create these structures. Maybe they have like full hedges of it and they want to kind of maintain all of it. And they have kind of like these hoop houses over it as well, which would also kind of do the trick too.
I like the way they look when they're wrapped in burlap too, like, they become these little winter characters, you know?
Yeah.
And it's these slouching figures.
Yeah. I've even seen people like during the holidays take them and they're wrapped in burlap and then they make like little gnomes out of them
Oh my
because
god,
of just the
cute.
characteristics that look. So you can even be really creative if you're like, oh, I don't like the look of it. Maybe make it a little more jolly and that kind of works for you too. Yeah. Okay, a few more things to talk about. So mulching. So mulching is another big winter prep step. And yes, there's still some good news. You can still do this even if the soil is frozen. So it's a layer of 4 to 6 inches of shredded leaves, pine needles, or straw that helps insulate perennial roots from temperature swings. So, which are honestly more damaging than the cold itself. So, I know that, like, I was reading on the Minnesota Horticultural Society notes that mulch is most useful after the ground is frozen because it holds the soil temperature steady, which I think
Oh,
was something I wasn't always thinking of. I put like extra mulch down on my roses or other sensitive plants or even like zone 5 bordering plants for us. I always add that extra mulch. And so it's more important that the ground is kind of frozen and then you're applying because it actually maintains that temperature better versus it's all warm underneath and then it's eventually going through those thaw and freeze cycles. So, Nisa, what's your mulch of choice? Like, are you a shredded leaves purist or a fancy mulch person?
I mulch all my garden beds with leaves over the winter, and then I have 2 giant maple trees, so I have a lot of leaves, so I
Oh, you're
compost
lucky.
most of them, but I also really like wood chips, and so I have this huge pile of wood chips still so that I'll put around, like, newly planted things and new shrubs or, yeah, those more sensitive perennials. I know, like,
Mhm.
at the garden store this last season, so many people came in wondering why their plants died, and it was
Yeah,
because of that lack of winter insulation last year when we
absolutely.
didn't have any snow.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and I feel like I use my leaves that fall, I just blow them into my garden, and then I will also mulch, like I was saying, like, the sensitive things, like my roses, I like to just like, create a cone of mulch, wood bark mulch over them versus you can use, like, the styrofoam covers or other things, but that's just because I play with sensitive rose plants that probably wouldn't always make every winter.
Mhm.
And I was also thinking, like, people who have rock as mulch, if you will, or in their garden beds, you can still use like wood chips or other things to insulate plants to just maintain them through the winter. And you're exactly right. The biggest thing is like if we don't get any snow, like that's not going to help us out. So for anyone listening, mulch late is better than no mulch at all. Protects our marginal perennials, roses, and anything newly planted is a good idea. And it just reduces that frost heave, that kind of annoying frost freeze cycle that pushes plants upward like they're trying to escape. A few other things. So protecting our perennials and keeping kind of snow in your favor. So like we talked about, snow is actually like your friend, right? So like this year, I'm excited to see snow on the ground. It's kind of that free insulation, like you said. And a thick blanket of snow can keep soil at a steady temperature, even when air temps dip to like negative double digits, which totally happens for us here, right?
Mhm.
But uneven melting, especially near foundations, can expose roots. If that happens, you can gently push snow back over exposed perennial crowns. You're basically kind of like tucking them back into bed. I know when I take my little snow blower on my little bit of sidewalk that I have, like I purposely push the snow like over certain plants or up against my foundation actually, because I do want that to kind of maintain an exposure where I know I like have some bulbs or other sensitive plants that are still growing up near the house.
Oh, that's
Anissa,
such
do you have any plants that you like baby more than others in the winter? I was kind of thinking of this of like, talking about my roses and a few other things, but any favorites you check on like a helicopter plant parent during this time?
Well, I have this little spot that I've been trying to get a lupin, like, bed going for a couple years, and last
Yeah.
year, I had a bunch of really nice plants, so I was, like, really stoked. I was like, "Okay, they're gonna come back," and then, and then, only 2 did, and it was I'm pretty sure because I didn't mulch that area at all, and we didn't get any snow, and they were so little, and you could see them sort of heaving, right?
Yeah.
Heaving to death, and, like, so I've really regretted not taking better care of that. So this year I definitely made sure to put some extra mulch down. I have a couple other new little perennials there that I wanted to protect out coming out of their first year. And I love that you brought up the idea of putting mulch on even after it's snowed and after the ground has froze because it's still going to function. It's still going to protect those plants. And I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever thought of doing that. I feel like once the ground freezes and the snow like, my mind is like, "Well, we're done gardening for the year." You know what I mean? But that's, really brilliant idea to keep in mind that you can put mulch on anytime throughout the winter.
Yeah, and or even throw the more snow if it's just like if it melted in a spot, like again, like snow can also be that if you don't want to go out and buy a bag of mulch or something to kind of cover it. It definitely helps. And we may even midway through also kind of get this little warm up that could melt a chunk of snow, so we may have bare soil again. So it's
Mhm.
just something to keep in mind, through the winter. Some other like avoiding like common like winter mistakes I was thinking of it was just like people like cutting back everything too early. I know we posted this in our Instagram account of just like things to prune or not. But to mention it here, I feel like, our ornamental grasses, hydrangeas, coneflowers, black eyed Susans, actually enjoy being left standing because they also protect themselves and provide winter interest and offer seeds for birds. Leaving pots outside with soil is probably something to mention. So, frozen soil expands and shatters pottery. So if you haven't already stored your ceramic or terracotta pots, dump them out and bring them into a garage or shed as soon as temps warm even slightly above freezing.
Or at
And
least
then,
just kick them over, right?
yeah,
I see people do
absolutely.
that a lot. They just kick them over so they're on their side so they don't, you know
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I feel like you can do many things there if you can even just put a cover on top of some of them so like moisture isn't getting into the pot even.
Mhm.
I know I do that with a few pots that I just like leave either because they're so large I can't move them. And so like having something to just cover the top so that moisture isn't getting in and expanding that soil, if I have it, will make a difference too. There's also like I know what he deal with a lot here of just like rock salt near our landscaping. So keeping in mind as we get snow, like salt runoff harms turf and plants. And so, thinking of other alternatives like sand or the calcium magnesium acetate instead, if possible, is like better um, to use if you have it. The last thing I was going to mention, Anissa, was just around like watering trees. And I know we talked about this with, I think, some new plants you put in recently, but I think this one sometimes surprises people, right? Especially for us here because of our winters. So in early winter, when we get a warm spell above freezing, you can actually still water your evergreens and newly planted trees. And I know like I was reading the U of M extension notes that like fall and early winter drought stress is like a major cause of like die off in like young trees the following spring. So if we get one of those 35-degree thaws in December or it drigs out and we have more of that, you can tell there's no moisture in the ground possibly, it's time to drag out your watering can because they'll thank you in April by doing so.
Never too late to mulch or water.
Exactly. And you don't think about it, right? Like you feel like you go into hibernation like everything else, but the reality is if you're paying attention to your garden, those are some common things you can do to ensure that your plants come through for you in April as well.
Yeah, I
Anissa?
know that, like, at the garden center, when people are buying shrubs in, like, September and October, I'm always just like, "Water, water, water," like, water them obsessively, and we had to people, I think, stop wanting to water when it gets a little cool out, so people don't think to water in October, but having those new plants well hydrated could mean, like, if they're gonna it could, like, make or break their
Yep.
survival to, like, really water them well in the fall.
Yeah, exactly. So before we wrap up, my quick checklist that you can keep in your mind for this winter and next. So wrap young tree trunks or burlap, add mulch to perennials even now, right? Protect shrubs with that burlap screens if exposed to wind, move snow around to insulate plant crowns, store your pottery in fragile containers, watch out for salt burn around walkways, water those evergreens, check rabbit fencing and vulgars because if your snow gets higher, you may have to create a bigger barrier. And when we get our heavy snows, don't forget to sometimes brush off your arborvitaes and evergreens that might actually be bending or break limbs from that. And if it is icy, don't shake it off. You need to let it melt naturally. You may snap branches. We get ice storms as well. So simple tasks save a lot of heartbreak come spring.
Save a heartbreak. Well, we have a listener question here, Eric. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah.
All right. So Justin writes and asks us, I ordered tulips to plant this fall, but didn't get them in the ground before the ground froze. Or can I plant them in the spring or should I wait until next fall?
Yeah, I feel like my short answer is like don't wait until spring and don't wait until next fall. Plant them now, even though the ground is frozen. So tulips need a long cold period to form blooms, right? So they require like about like 12 to 14 weeks of like consistent cold soil, which is like below 45 degrees. And that like helps trigger the process for them to flower and to form. And if you wait until spring, they won't get that chill, and you likely will end up with like leaves and like no blooms. So you can like still plant in frozen or partially frozen soil. You might be still able to do so, even though the ground's freezing may not be as deep, or maybe in certain slightly thawed out patches, you might be able to get in. You probably have to dig about 8 inches down, keep in mind. And so you could do that if they find a condition. The other thing I do is I would probably throw it in a container and fill it with potting mix. And, either if you have a space to put it outdoors, but you don't want it to freeze full, I'd put it like in an unheated garage or shed where they can still experience the cold, but then they will make up it in the springtime. And if anything else fails, I don't know if you've done this, you can refrigerate the bulbs again for 12 to 14 weeks, and then you can plant them in pots in like the springtime. And kind of just in doing that, you also have to kind of avoid storing like near fruit that ethylene gas can like actually damage the bulbs, funny enough. So you just can't store it with fruit.
And I did not know that. Huh.
Yeah. Otherwise, obviously, like waiting until next fall is never going to be ideal. So you need to do something with them today because they will not survive and they will kind of desiccate by next fall time. So that's what I would recommend.
Nice. Yeah, and a lot of times you can get some good deals on bulbs in the late fall from garden centers and then just take them home and throw them in some dirt in a pot and leave it in your garage and deal with it later.
Exactly. Yes, agreed.
Awesome. Well, if you have a gardening question you'd like us to answer, please write to us at petalandplot@gmail.com. That's PETALNPLOT@gmail.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone you know and click the follow button to hear our next episode.
As garden designers here at Petal and Plot, we also offer year-round in-person and virtual gardening consultations and custom garden designs as well. Please reach out to us if you'd like to set one up. Want to see more of what we're up to? Please follow us on Instagram at Petal and Plot. That's PETALNPLOT. Thanks for tuning in to Petal and Plot. Stay warm, stay curious, and take good care of your winter garden. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.